smoking cigarettes, breaking commandments. Complaining about a football. What's the matter? You're so tired. If you really want to be a rebel,
welcome back to the third part of our Easter special. I've been talking about the science of the cross and the history of what the cross actually was. And I need the bottom part. I was talking about the difference between a Latin cross and a tau cross. The difference is how one was buried and one was not. I'm going to continue right where it was. The accused would have to be nailed to the platinum, which is the main tier piece, the one piece, while laying down. So, picture this: Jesus being thrown upon the ground, probably being held, maybe even still possibly even being shackled. You know, other criminals were shackled at that point still, and which would open the wounds. It would be ground into the dirt, cause more bleeding, and then they start nailing the hands in. And the Greek meaning for hands includes the wrist, and that's why I said it's more likely that the nails went through the wrist and not the hand, because it would just slide right off. The upper body is not actually held by the cross. It's placed by just in the wrist. The bones in the lower portion of the hand support the weight of the arms and nailed to this. So the nail is, like I said, like 7 to 9 inches long, and it destroys all the main arteries in the body. And once the victim is secured, they lift the piece up, most likely with either ropes. Probably has a rope pulley system, or maybe just a rope at the end, and they're probably got a few people pulling it as they stand it up, either into place into a hole that's already established. So then so he's getting raised back, and then he's on his arms, and finally it gets slammed down into place. So that initial hit into the ground is going to cause even more damage to the upper body, and that's the first part that probably dislocates his shoulder. A lot of people have been asking me, why are you going to describe what happens on the cross? I mean, he just died, right? And he just went through this, and it can't be that really big of a degree or anything. But it is. This is something you have to realize, that this is the only man that has gone through this kind of level of torture by not just one person, but a group of persons. And I have to warn you that the show tonight is very graphic. This is pretty much in a Christian version of an R-rated movie that I'm talking to you about.
Well, it's pretty much the Christian version of our like the Passion of the Christ. Where
they more than likely when it comes to the feet, if he got nailed through just the bottom of the feet, that would be the same kind of scenario with it splitting between the toes. He probably got nailed at the top, with the knees flexed, probably about approximately 90-degree level, and the weight of the body pushes down on the nails, so he's pushing down on his feet. So he's trying to breathe in through his diaphragm. So he pushes up, and he has to push on his feet to be able to breathe very, very well. Because when you're constricted like this, and you're pushed back like that, your head is kind of, you can only do short breaths. You have to honestly push yourself out. So you're pulling on your chest muscles, your shoulders, your back. You're putting the weight on your legs, and and Jesus spoke 7 times, which normally when someone who's on the cross, or a form of crucifixion, based on the historical notes that I've looked at, most people would cry for a few minutes, and then they couldn't say anything else because they were too busy trying to breathe. The Gospels say Jesus spoke 7 times. And the reason why everyone knows that Jesus is the perfect example and the only true example that has gone through the most pain is he's still in this moment, he's still able to say, please forgive them. The next step that happens during the difficulty of trying to exhale is a slow form of suffocation. You're technically suffocating yourself. The carbon dioxide builds up in your blood from the high level of carbonic acid that is within your blood, and it triggers a desire to want to breathe. But what happens is kind of like me with my asthma. You want to breathe faster, faster, faster. That's why women that go to Lamaze class are told to have this pattern of breathing to maintain stuff. When I was in the Coast Guard, when I was running, I was told to maintain a level of breathing. Breathe in your nose, breathe out your mouth. Breathe in your nose, breathe out your mouth. And keep the same tempo. But when you're in these situations, you get decreased oxygen. They say when you run, if you run on an elliptical machine or a treadmill and you do the speed of 7, anywhere from 2 to 7 minutes, over 5 to 15% of your oxygen level will decrease, and you're going to want to breathe faster. If you have been dehydrated, your sides are going to start to hurt. And that's one of the things too, is Jesus did not have anything to drink. So his body is starting to absorb all the liquid that's in it, and he's even hurting to even breathe. I remember one time when I was at boot camp trying to run, and we weren't allowed to eat or drink or anything, and you can you start to hurt, and the instructor would come over and say, well, you need to breathe, and you can go through the pain, you can do this. But at the point when Jesus finally lost things, the tissues in his capillaries began leaking the fluid from his blood into his tissues, and this results a buildup of fluid around the heart, pericardial effusion as it's called, and the lungs, a pleural effusion. What ends up happening is your lungs collapse, your heart can fail, dehydration, and the body essentially suffocates itself. The longer this goes on, eventually you're going to have cardiac arrest or cardiac stress, and in some cases cardiac rupture. So the longer this goes, more than likely, as Jesus is nailed to the cross and going through these things, the final thing that might have finally taken him out is Jesus had a heart attack and his heart exploded. We all talk about that Jesus Christ needs to come and live inside of my heart, and we need to allow him to move us to a place that we need to be. So I believe personally that one way that Jesus died was he was, beaten, he was, nailed to a cross, he suffocated, his body was dehydrated, and his heart blew up. I honestly believe, and that is an actual true statement. A heart attack, most people say heart attack is where your heart's just being overused and it doesn't pump anymore. It just stops. And it just pretty much drowns itself. In the case of this, we literally mean that the blood is flowing so fast through the veins and through the valves of the heart that the valves actually explode, and then the heart itself actually implodes or actually breaks apart. We know that after Jesus dies, there's a spear put into his side. They break the legs of the two criminals alongside him. And if you can't use your legs to raise up, they suffocate.
Almost immediately.
And they did not break Jesus' legs, so they verified in their own way that he was dead. Some people say, well, I don't think Jesus died quite yet. If Jesus didn't die when he was on the cross, when they put him in the tomb, he would have suffocated. So if he wasn't already dead at that point, then he ended up suffocating in the cave. Some people say, well, if he's Jesus Christ, and he has all this power, why didn't he just, save himself? Couldn't he have just saved himself from that point? Well, I mean, why not? We're going to take one more break, and we will return.